From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. We're going to squish all of that together today on this episode of Subjective Wars. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
And I'm Jennifer Landa.
Subjective Wars, as you know, is a show where we take a topic, we take two things, we pit them against each other, we get into the arena and fight about it viciously, violently maybe even. No, actually, it's a nice conversation that's our subjective opinions on the topic. And today we got one that I'll say right up top. We always ask for our bias before I get to your biases. I'm split down the center of my soul on this one. It is the binge model of watching and releasing television programs on streaming, or just streaming programs on streaming, versus the weekly release model, which does take you back to the golden age of television, which might have been 7 years ago the last time. I don't know. We'll see. Binge versus weekly. This is where we're at. And man, like I said, I'm trying to track it in my own heart where I switched, what I like, what I prefer, the different factors. The metrics for the debate usually emerge during the show. But Joseph, I'm going to start with you. Where are your biases at the start of this episode?
My bias is to weekly, but I think I was thinking about this because we've had this weird pendulum swing that, 10 years ago now, Netflix was dominant and they introduced the binge model and we all loved it because it was different than what we used to have. And I think we had been trained by the proliferation of television shows on DVDs to enjoy that experience of binging. So I thought I was team binge, but then I got broken by how much either you sat down and gave your whole weekend to a new thing, or you weren't part of the conversation and was really like, I want weekly. And now many more things are weekly, which leaves me wondering, like, sometimes would I prefer a balance? Would I want things that are bingeable? Because there's like a lot of the kind of spinning lots of different narrative plates of all the different things you're watching and tracking when they come out and all that. They're like, man, every once in a while, I wouldn't mind going back to a binge. So I think partially I wanted to talk about this to work through my own feelings. So I lean toward weekly, but I'm fascinated with experimenting with getting back together with binge.
Rekindling a love with binge. Yeah, there's a lot, I just picked up an 8-pack of frozen burritos. I love frozen burritos. By the 8th one, I might be wanting just once a week, but then when I get one a week, I was like, it'd be great, a pack of them in my fridge ready to go. Jen, where do you start with this?
If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have said binge. But now where I am, I could maybe go 1.5 episodes max before I fall asleep. Every single time, it doesn't matter the show. So at the stage of my life that I'm in right now, I can only handle weekly. So if this is all just selfish reasons, just release it weekly so I can at least watch that one episode, stay awake. I feel like I'm a part of our culture.
I think you're both talking about something that is a truth here. I started my streaming career. The thing that made me go, all right, fine, I'll sign up for one of these was Netflix, and it was Arrested Development, the ill-fated, some would say, season 4. Not my favorite, but it's one of my all-time favorite shows. And I was like, I'm absolutely, you get my whatever I paid, $6.99 a month or whatever it was back then, you're getting it. And then all the episodes dropped, and what a weekend that was. I loved it, and I still get it, and I'm with you, Joseph. And, sometimes you're like, it'd be nice. But a lot has changed, and I think Stranger Things was the first time it really switched for me, where I couldn't get to it, and I felt I missed it because the conversation around me, and I'm not talking about social media, I'm talking about friends, actual real human beings, where it was like, I've missed it. I'm sorry, I can't even be on your conversation. Not for spoilers, just I'm lost. And then I finally, like a month later, sat down with a friend and watched it and loved it. But I felt like I had missed the moment. It's a personal thing. So that's why I like the forced patience of weekly. But I'm open to binge because I understand.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating that like maybe binge works better for things that are a little bit more siloed off of like, or for like, hey, there's a hardcore group of relatively small people who are into this thing, so they can all attack it, right? But if you want something that the entire culture is going to talk about, the binge model is really difficult because people feel left out of like, sorry, I had foot surgery on Stranger Things weekend, and now I'm just not a part of this. It's difficult.
It is. Jed, how many times have you're sticking to weekly simply because you can't stay awake? But how many times in the past has that have been a problem for you, missing out?
Oh, the Stranger Things is a great example. I really felt like people, I don't know how they did it. It felt like overnight after it was released, everyone had watched the whole thing. So then it was like me racing to try and get ahead of spoilers, which I'm not even that invested in it. But I was like, oh God, I gotta watch it. So I was like forcing my husband, we gotta watch these episodes. And then it kind of felt more like a chore, right? Where I'm just trying to get through it and I feel exhausted, but I don't want to be behind. So Stranger Things is a great example. And I think that was the last time that I did the most recent season that I binged.
Yeah. Stranger Things is a real good sort of barometer of how it's changed over the years since Stranger Things. Because first season, I think I was still in binge mode and everybody's talking about this and we watched it real fast and it was great. I remember either the second or the third season, like people inviting me to like Halloween parties and being like, I'm sorry, I have to finish Stranger Things. Like, we understand. Like it was, I'm sorry, my dad needs help moving or whatever. Like it was a real legitimate, real world thing of like, well, of course you do. Please. I'm so sorry I invited you to a party. By the time this last season came out and those episodes were chunky, they were long.
They were long.
I grumbled about it. I enjoyed the actual story, but I was annoyed by it and felt like, yes, in order to have it not spoiled and be on social media, that I had to do that with my weekend. And that really did bite into my enjoyment of it. So the whole course of Stranger Things is a great example of how it's changed in culture.
This might be, ForceCenter covers Stranger Things episode, but going back to season 1, it was like, the whole Barb thing. I knew she was gone by the time I sat down with it. And mileage may vary with spoilers. This isn't an indictment of spoilers and spoiler culture. That's just where we are, and that's a thing. And you can choose to engage or block or mute or whatever. I get that. But it's beyond that. It's just like, well, then what's the point? And I had that vibe. And it was a friend finally saying, no, we're going to sit down this week and I'm going to make you watch it. Okay. And that's how I got into the show. And I did quite enjoy it. I enjoyed that TV show. Jen, you're talking about, again, I don't want to keep harkening back to your inability to stay awake, but that's part of this too.
It is.
What's the benefits of weekly?
The benefits of weekly are, and there's a lot of nostalgia. I was thinking about Cheers yesterday, and I was like, why? Like, I was young, and somehow I was staying up, but there was something about like that appointment television that I love. That the water cooler shows from Cheers all the way on Seinfeld. I know people love Friends. To even House of the Dragon, I would say, certainly Game of Thrones, right? Like there's these things, and it just feels like we're all coming together and sharing these moments, specifically usually online, or maybe if you go to an office job or something, you get to share with your coworkers. That is fun to me. It's why I love Star Wars, why I love the Star Wars community, to connect with people, right? It's not just me binging through it and then being like, well, that was interesting. It's like part of the fun is figuring out what's going to happen next week on this TV show. So I love weekly.
Yeah. You're talking about, the appointment television thing. Game of Thrones is definitely one you feel that. But one of the biggest ones for me was True Detective. That season 1 finale. I was in a room with like 8 people, but you just felt like HBO's early streaming, like it was buffering. Like there's too many people in the world watching at once. And that was frustrating, but that's about different conversation. But it was fun. I do miss.
And I think in recent times, Succession tapped into that up to the point of people really, really guessing how it was going to happen, all that. So, I mean, I think, a couple years back when Disney Plus and really all the other, non-Netflix streamers were really gearing up, there's that question of whether they're going to do weekly or not. And I was so entirely team weekly because I think it is important to give room for the discussion, but also just for us to process art. I don't think that art can make a difference to us unless we give it a little time to sink in. And I think it's interesting that the sort of weekly versus binge thing is all happening in the streaming era, where the model was pump out as much content, storytelling, whatever you want to call it, is humanly possible. So I really love with Star Wars being able to take the time to discuss it and guess and predict about what might happen next and all those things. But there's also still like so much storytelling that I wonder if we still even have enough time to sort of let it sink in and process, or if people are like, I watched that one, now I'm on to this one. I watched this one, now I'm on to that one, you know?
How much can we, us as podcasters or pundits in that TV movie critic world, so to speak, are you able to separate that too? Does that factor into this? Where I think weekly is a better business model for some of the shows. I don't mean to, bring in, own the conversation for 8 weeks versus a weekend, but that's kind of a truth too. I don't know. Does it tie too much into our what we do here for a living, or also is it just in that category, Jen, of like you were saying, of just the water cooler moment? And I grew up with it, so it's hard to separate that. Joseph, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the philosophy behind it there.
Yeah, no, Jen, go ahead.
No, I think it is complicated because it's like if your show does not hit that first weekend and it is a bingeable show, then what do you do? Right? Then it just kind of like just fades away. Whereas you can still build up some sort of hype and momentum and maybe word of mouth over the course of like a weekly series. But yeah, if your show comes out and it's like crickets, maybe people will find it like, this show that I watched recently on Netflix, it's about the plane crash. Oh, someone in the comments, tell me what it is. I can't even remember it. That's how memorable it was. But I binged it because it was kind of fun. And it came out on NBC like years ago. And it actually had such a great, people really liked it so much that they were like, we're going to do another season for Netflix. And then it wasn't as good, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
But it is possible to, that's it. Manifest.
Okay.
Manifest, right? So that was like delayed. I mean, I think it was a hit on NBC, but my point is that I think that weekly is a better business model.
Yeah, I think weekly is definitely a better business model. I think I am affected definitely from the podcast world. That's part of the reason I really didn't like Mandalorian and Bad Batch overlapping, because. And even not even covering any of the Marvel shows, but when there's that weird era of like Disney hasn't figured out how to broadcast things except for at midnight, Tuesday into Wednesday or whatever it was, and that like in order to not be spoiled, everything is a homework. I can't watch Loki when I feel like watching Loki. I have to get up and like. So it does come from the podcasting side and the business side, but it also comes from the fan side. Of I want things to be separated out so they can be savored. Like I'm kind of in a dream zone right now in a wonderful way. That Acolyte, we've got I think appointment television. The numbers were good. There's plenty to think about and pontificate about and guess about because of the mystery. So we have that on Tuesday on primetime, and then on Friday at 4 p.m. on the West Coast in America, Doctor Who, which also has a very discussable series of mysteries going on in the center of it. And having those just spread out by a couple days is like, now I have time to room to breathe. And I can wander around. When I'm taking a shower, I think about the Acolyte on Wednesday. When I'm taking a shower on Saturday, I take more than 2 showers a week. But depends on how many shows I need to think about is how often I shower. But it's nice to be able to have time to think about them both and let them breathe. So I think it is as a podcast person, but it's also just as a fan. I won't get attachment. Some of the shows I've binged and I've liked, I'm like, oh, I forgot I watched that. I thought it was really deep. I had a lot of great thoughts about it. I thought it was really important and vital. And then a year later, I'm like, I forgot I watched that, because when you binge, it just doesn't stick in your brain as much unless you revisit it and revisit it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and maybe to stick up for binge a little bit, I still enjoy it. And I want to get both your thoughts on this. I still enjoy it from time to time on either shows I'm catching up with or missed, revisiting, and it's still fun to click next episode, and you can go for a couple hours. And I find that with like docu-series things, I love that. That works for me. I think the idea, going back to the Arrested Development showing up, it was great. This all in front of you. There's control. You could control it in terms of your own life. I love that. It's hard to separate all of this podcasting side, but not just the business model, but just also the world, man. The lack of patience. I hate to sound like a grumpy old man. I'm just like, wait a week. Just wait a week. Trust me. Go out and live. Go for a walk. You're gonna be able to enjoy the show. And that's no. I don't ever want to finger wag, but I think that's where I come down on a lot of this weekly stuff versus binge. Is just go. This is part of life, man. It's not all in front of you. It's not all there.
Which, it actually, I'll stick up for binge a little bit here, or state a case. There's something very carefree and youthful about binging. And we binged the OC back when it was on DVD. And my sister and I were like, we're going to get through the entire show. We binged it on all the DVDs. I did the same thing with Arrested Development before it was streaming. I did all the DVDs. There was something so fun. I did it with Real World. Remember back in the day when they would have those marathons and Real World would be on MTV for hours? I did that with the San Francisco Real World. Oh my gosh. So I've been binging since before it was on streaming. And that, to me, I have some wonderful memories about me hanging out, doing absolutely nothing but just watching these shows. I can't imagine doing that now, obviously, because there's so many other things that are, responsibilities, and my children will be like, Mom, where's our food? So there is something that's like, oh, I miss those days of being able just to be like, I am carving out time to just enjoy my show, right? There's something kind of romantic about that. Or maybe when you're dating someone, be like, let's binge a show together. Oh, it'd be so sweet.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think there has been a fundamental shift, and I'd be very interested in people of different ages perspective. But, growing up for me, I think there's a lot of shows that I truly enjoyed. I enjoyed them, but also they were my break from real life. And the Cheers theme music at the end makes me sad to this day, because that is the music that is kicking my ass back into real life. And when binging, I remember watching episodes of Deep Space Nine, and because I was in college at the time, it's like, oh man, the second it's over, I have to finish writing that paper. And binging is this I'm an adult now, and I can choose to stay in fantasy land.
Yeah.
It isn't just the enjoyment of the show, or it being a great show like 24. I think 24 on DVD drove the binge model, because that show is a drug in terms of cliffhangers, in terms of what's next. And it felt new and freeing, and I didn't need to get kicked out of the fantasy world. And I didn't watch 24 ever weekly. My friends had a 48-hour watch all of 24 as quickly as possible party. And then when Sarah and I first started dating and got married, I got them on DVD, and I was kind of like, at least 4 a night, or you're not really getting the experience. And part of that is the structure of the show. But part of it, I think, from our generation's perspective, is maybe this is a power we didn't used to have. And now I maybe just... Yes. I've had fun with that power. Now I want to slow down and take a deep breath and chew my food and give myself time to digest.
Yeah, you're making me think of my Tuesday trips to Best Buy when you'd go get full seasons, and I'd spend way too much money. And Game of Thrones has been a great example, where first season comes out, we're all watching weekly. It's water cooler, then the DVD comes out, or I think maybe by then Blu-ray, I can't remember. I just know it wasn't VHS. And it's like, I could do this. This could be my Saturday. Oh my God. And that was definitely... It was rebellious as compared to our network television and the cable television upbringing. I think that's a valuable thing about it. That's why I think I loved it. And then it truly became too many burritos at once for me. Where I'm supposed to be rewatching House of Dragon for season 2 coming up, and I'm getting through one episode and stopping like it's weekly, and I'm running out of time.
The one thing that I'll say for the binge model is that I've been on about this. I'll probably be on about it again soon, because we got a question coming up on one of our shows. I do think that Netflix, being the pioneer of the streaming model, And Netflix at the time really, even back to a couple of years ago when I had the opportunity to pitch to Netflix, one of their big things was, how clickable is it? How great are the cliffhangers to make you want to watch the next episode? All of the structure of Netflix was about racing you through the story. And now that we're back to mostly weekly on the streaming, I think some of that writing mentality, not of great cliffhangers, but that writing mentality of one episode kind of is mushily morphs into the next one because you're not really watching it episode by episode. You power through Stranger Things, and you might remember that one really different episode or whatever. But for the most part, it's just a mush. It's a mush.
Yeah.
It's not the episode where X happens to Barb. It's you remember that happened to Barb. You remember Barb's arc, but there isn't that episode by episode definition. And I feel like some streaming that is weekly is suffering from it's still written as though you're watching it all at once. And the episodes don't have as much individual definition. And a part of me is kind of like, maybe I'd be okay with it if we're going to do just a six-part show. Like, would I have been okay with Kenobi dumped at once? I actually think the Kenobi show, I think actually those episodes do have definition, but I'm just using it as an example of something that was shorter in Star Wars of like, it's pretty bingeable.
Yeah, it is.
In terms of the time period, like what I want every once in a while, like this isn't supposed to be a television show. It's a kind of extended movie. It's only 3 or 4 or 5, 6 episodes. That would be interesting to me.
This has been a conversation we've been having around the ForceCenter parts for a while here of the writing styles, and sometimes it works. It works for some of our listeners. It doesn't for others. I struggle. I've mentioned a few times the Andor endings aren't my favorite. I think they're written for more of a binge model. And it's not that I want 22 minutes and commercial breaks time to the second. It's just, to what you're saying, it feels a little less impactful. The releasing first 2 episodes or sometimes the first 3 episodes of seasons is a cheat for views at times. To be clear, it's more of that watch time numbers versus that. But also, it feels like, how many times have we said, "Well, I'm glad those first 2 episodes were released at once," because I bet people will be upset if just 1 episode came out because it's such a soft ending, right? It's not even a cliffhanger; it's just a soft ending, and these 2 episodes were 1 episode. I think that's sometimes what I struggle with, and that's a bigger conversation that we've had around here.
You know what? I just realized we're really kind of screwed, because I was thinking about it like in terms of our types of shows that we're watching, but then I started thinking about my kids. Peppa the Pig, Bluey. Oh my God, those episodes were like 8 minutes long, and my daughter and Disney Plus needs to get on this. They have the credits. They let the credits roll, and she's like, "I want the next one. I want the next one." Every single kid show I can think of is quote unquote bingeable, right? They have become so accustomed to that model, even that now when we go and see the movie, and this is like the streaming versus like theatrical stuff. We went and saw the Trolls movie, and my daughter's like, "I want to go home and watch it," because she's so used to having everything in the theater being streamable. And it was like, "No, you have to wait." And then it's like, of course she sees it eventually, and she's like, "I want to buy it. I want to rent it." And it's like, I'm having to literally train my kids to understand you cannot watch everything that you want when you want to see it. There was a time when I had to sit and watch the news because my shows went off the air, right? Or I only had Saturday mornings to watch my cartoons. So it really, I don't know what this younger generation, how things are going to change with them, because everything is instant. And then the TikTok and Reels, and it's all like instant gratification. We have all these generations that we're going to have to shape them, hone them to get used to our weekly model.
Can I ask you a thing about your daughter with Trolls? So when she found out she couldn't immediately get another Trolls fix,
oh God,
was she like,
Trolls. Give me the Trolls.
Then Trolls is dead to me? Or did she spend time thinking and imagining about Trolls in the interim, because she had no choice but to imagine if she wanted to spend time in Trollland?
She was very upset. She's 4. So she like cried. She kind of threw a tantrum. We listened. Then what happened was we listened to the Troll soundtrack on repeat for months but she still is obsessed with trolls now. Now there'll be an instance where maybe like with us, with our generation, I would have been like, let's go get the action figures. Let's go get the toys. But we have so many toys. I didn't want to do that. So I just let her, it's okay. She has to be disappointed and she has to work through it. And then now she watches it often and also on her iPad because they show clips. So
okay.
Yeah.
So her trolls love was strong enough to survive the wait.
It did survive. Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's grown stronger. And I got books. I found other ways to kind of keep her love alive.
Okay.
Well, we're coming down the end of the episode here, and you know, like we always say, the metric emerges during the episode, but the metrics, I mean, but it's all over. Very clearly, we have a generational, not even bias, but a generational experience that leads us down certain paths where we're just built for the weekly. We're built for see you next week on Cheers versus it's next, but also we appreciate it because I love binging Cheers right now if I just need something on in the background. So I think to be clear for those watching, we're not just old crusty folks screaming at the clouds. We understand the benefits of both sides. But in this subjective war, Joseph, where do you go? What do you lean to towards the end here?
I think for myself, I think that the binge model has its place, and I do want some things to be bingeable. Disney Plus did experiment. The Marvel show Echo, they did a couple of bits of experimentation with it, labeling it the Marvel Spotlight and trying to kind of tell you didn't need to see anything else, and they dropped it as a binge model. And people who cared binged it, and I binged it over like 2 days. And that was enjoyable. And I would definitely be open to, hey, we want to do a shorter project. It's not going to be a second season. It's not a television show. It's a one-time limited event. Let me binge that. If it's like 6 hours, that's fine. But in the big picture, I think weekly is better for building community. And I think weekly is better for letting art seep into our souls and actually affect us. I think things have an entertainment value of give me a break from my day. But I think when we get really attached to something, it's because it sinks into our souls. And I think we need a little bit of time in general for that, or at least I do. So I'm going to go weekly in the end.
It's other center well said there. I'm with you on this here, but Jen, I want to hear your thoughts. I don't think you've been swayed. Weekly still might be in your heart.
It is. But, I go back to when I was a kid binging I Love Lucy, the reruns, right? That shaped my childhood so much. So am I being dishonest by bagging on binge? I don't know, because I've been a binger my whole life. But I see where it's leading the children. While I appreciate back episodes, Peppa the Pig. I just think that for the sake of art, I do think that weekly is the way to go.
For the sake of art, this is big stuff. For the sake of art, society, the future. I'm with you. I'm right. Flag planted in weekly. It fits into my life, but it isn't just about my life. I do think there's some benefits to weekly stuff, but I like and respect bingers. I got a binger in my house. She prefers binge. Weekly's a struggle, and I get it. There's some real world things too. There's something to be said about Friday night is this show, Saturday night is life. Totally get it. But building community, arts, better for podcast coverage, all those things. And also, I like just watching something and putting it aside and getting back to it next week so I can get outside. And it's not a touch grass comment. It's just there's other things in life, and I want to go live them. And weekly, for me, because it's subjective worth, is better. And with that, weekly sweeps here. It's a clean sweep, but it's closer than you'd think. We respect the models. There you go. All right. We've done it. We fought this war. I know there's going to be a lot of opinions on this, and we want them. You can find those. You can find us on social media at ForceCenter Pod, YouTube page here. Subscribe, leave a comment down below. Be nice about it. Don't yell at us. We're not yelling at you. We're having fun. we're having fun. I'm anticipating a war that might never show up. Now, comment down below, subscribe if you're here. We're also on Instagram, Facebook pages, ForceCenter Podcast. Also, you can get merch at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter, and you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Binge our podcast too if you want. Go back, check all the episodes out. It's all there. Follow me at Ken Napzok, or go to my website, kennapzok.com for more. Jen, where can they find you?
You can binge my content at Jennifer Landa on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
There you go. Joseph, where can I find you and your art released in a, individual format?
Yeah,
no Scrimshaw binge short films yet.
Not yet. I haven't set it up. But you can binge my old videos on TikTok. I'm doing better on followers since I've stopped posting on TikTok. Yeah. So you can binge all of my not unboxing videos, which people are apparently doing. Anyway, that's funny. The algorithm is just showing people stuff and they just watch what's ever there. So it's like when we were at home and like, well, Three's Company's on, so I'm watching it.
That's right.
Anyway, you can find me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for links to films playing in festivals, and for my blog, Finish Your Monsters. That's it for me.
That's it for Joseph, Jennifer, and me. We'll see you next time. The subjective wars have been